The NFL trade deadline's in the book, so that means I want to jump into our mock draft series and get back to it. I want to start with the New York Jets, since they made a ton of moves. We're going to do all 7 rounds of the mock draft with the NFL mock draft database. Let's get to it. Now we're on the board with pick 3. In the first round, they've got multiple picks. They've got multiple picks throughout the draft. They really did stockpile after making multiple big-time trades at the trade deadline. Really what this team's going to have to do is they're going to have to reset from the ground up in terms of their quarterback situation. This then turns to, do they make a move in the offseason? You obviously at the deadline heard names like Kyler Murray floated around in trade rumors. And with this team, I want to look at what they tried to do, right? Justin Fields, mobile quarterback, big arm, hasn't really paid dividends so far. So I think the issue here is we need a quarterback that not only is mobile, can move around and move that pocket around and make some different types of throws off time, but also is very quick to process and quick to make a decision. Not only has a big time arm, has the mobility to get out and run with the ball if need be, but also has the accuracy, has the timing, has those intangibles. Now, obviously, Aaron Glenn, prolific player in his career, coached in Detroit for a while under that grit mentality. So the issue is going to be, which quarterback do you think is that guy? At pick 3, they're probably going to have a pick. I don't know if they're really going to be able to pick of any of the quarterbacks. I really do think New Orleans probably is potentially going to be looking at a quarterback. I know they're looking at Tyler Shuck now. I don't know that I see him as the face of the franchise moving forward. I think they probably still look at quarterback. And as it stands right now, based on Tankathon's draft order, number 2 is Tennessee. They have their quarterback with Cam Ward. So the first 2 picks so far have been Ruben Bain and Kendrick Falk. Both high-end players, expect to be drafted in the top 5 in the NFL draft. So that they don't surprise me going this high. I did not pick these 2. I let it auto pick. I'm only picking for the Jets. So we're kind of at the mercy of the simulation otherwise. So with that being said, we have all 3 quarterbacks. Which quarterback would I take here? I'm probably going Fernando Mendoza. I mean, we saw, obviously he's a smart kid. Yale was looking at him before he went to Cal, moved over to Indiana and is playing under Signetti's really quarterback-friendly offense. But what you see here is a kid that's had to grind. He took a ton of punishment getting sacked to Cal a lot. We showed that he was very good under pressure. The numbers don't lie, and he's got one of the best offenses now in college football. He's ranked in the top, right there with Ohio State. So I would go Fernando Mendoza. If you're looking for a mobile quarterback, I mean, really any of these top few quarterbacks, Lenore Sellers would be another sneaky pick here. But I'm going to go Mendoza here just because I think he is, of the quarterbacks on the board, he's my favorite at this point. But if you told me it was Mendoza or Sellers, those are probably the 2 that I would think fit what the Jets are looking to do most. Then Dante Moore is kind of a close third, and Ty Simpson or one of the others would be after that. So we're going Mendoza here. On to the next pick. Back up with the second of New York's first-round picks in the 2026 NFL Draft. We're going to look at a couple of different positions. When I'm going into this, I'm looking that they're probably going to need to look for interior defensive line or edge rusher. Just because they brought back Mozzie Smith in the trade with Dallas doesn't mean they necessarily are set there. And then I think interior offensive line, probably a guard is an important piece to look at. Or do you grab yourself a tackle and just figure out which 2 tackles and which other one of them falls into the guard position? Those are one of those things that the team has to figure out. When I'm looking at the back end of the first round, I'm looking for a guy who is an exceptional, something jumps off the page, whether it's exceptional run blocking, pass protection, great off the edge. When you look at the guys that are currently available, Lomu, and I think is probably a guy that you would definitely want to target. But as I went down the list, we got Caleb Banks if you're looking for defensive linemen, Colton Hood, but they did take Thomas last season. And I do think obviously they will need another corner. At some point, Anthony Hill, I love him as a late first, early second round pick. But Gennings Dunker from Iowa, I love this kid. Crazy strong, massive individual who's great in the run game. One thing I think the Jets are going to continue to want to do is start with the run to set up the pass. So seeing him here, he's a guy that I would definitely target. And I'm not making any trades. So we are just picking the picks as they fall. And obviously this is going to change between now and the draft because we got plenty of football still left, but I'm trying to give you an idea of who potentially could be there and what this team could look like. I want to get my quarterback of the future. I want to protect my quarterback of the future. I then want to attack the opposing quarterbacks. Like those are kind of my mentality as we go. And then after that, we got to get secondary help, right? We need corner. We probably need at least one linebacker, so there's some different pieces here, but I'm going Gennings Dunker from Iowa. I really love the player. Extremely smart, extremely physical, extremely tough, really good as a run blocker, has room to grow as a pass protector, but I think you could see him do that at the next level. You could play him inside, you could play him outside, and then that gives you some versatility there. So give me Dunker from Iowa. Let's get on to that next second round pick. Back on the clock with the early second round, and at this point, we're looking for guys that can attack the quarterback, right? Attack the opposing quarterback. Anthony Hill Jr. is still available. This feels like a prime spot for me to want to jump on a guy like that. He's big, physical, smart, tough, great tackler. That's something if you stat PFF guys are looking, they've not been great at this season. They definitely don't rank very high in terms of tackles, in terms of tackling ability, if you're a grades guy. But Anthony Hill Jr. fixes that. The other thing this early in the process, we don't know who's coming out, who's staying, underclassmen, things like that. So this name could be different, but I love a player like Anthony Hill Jr. and his ability to attack the opposing offense. So give me Anthony Hill Jr. here. Let's get on to that next pick. Back on the clock with our other second round pick in the draft. A guy like Caleb Banks sitting here is insane to me. I really do think he's probably an early second round pick. If you look at what Aaron Glenn loved and did in Detroit with his defense, Caleb Banks gives you the Aleem McNeil vibes, right? He's massive individual who's extremely athletic and physical for his size, 6'6", well past the 320 mark. I think he's a guy that gives you a bit of versatility that you can move around along the defensive line, but he's a guy that you can put in the middle and be a big physical presence. It then gives you the ability to flex between a 3-4, 4-3, give some different looks, allow you to disguise some things. So I would go after a guy like this. Caleb Banks feels like a player that'll probably be gone by the mid to late second, but if he's still there, I would jump all over him. Back on the clock with their fourth round pick, and I think this is the point where I'm going to pull the trigger on a corner. Domani Jackson from Alabama has the speed, has the size, willing to play run support, come up and get his nose in there and get some tackles in the backfield. This guy has the ability to kind of do it all. I'm not going to say he's a Terrion Arnold type player, but kind of fits that mold a little bit. If you're looking for, I tend to liken what Detroit's defense has become as I'm thinking about what Aaron Glenn is going to look to try to do with the Jets defense. So Domani Jackson's a guy that fits in that style of corner that he's looking for, that I think if you can get him in the fourth round, I think they jump all over a player like that. Back on the clock in the fifth round, and I think I'm going to double dip on the defensive backs, mostly because I really like Rod Moore out of Michigan. He's played at a high level for a while. He's got the speed. He's got a little bit undersized for a true safety, but if you're using him as kind of a flex corner safety hybrid type position, I think he fits that really well. I think he's got a lot of what Aaron Glenn would look for in terms of, the mental aspects, as well as just he's got the physical tools to play the position, and he's played well in big time games, in big time situations. So give me a player like that. In the late parts of the draft, we're looking for tools, especially for a team like this that's looking to rebuild in Aaron Glenn's image. I think players like this can really help put that stamp on there and help the rebuild escalate. So give me Rod Moore here. Let's get to the next pick. So we have multiple dart throws here in the sixth and seventh round. We got a lot of picks to play with. Obviously, there's no trading, but this team is primed to move around as you get later into the draft because they got a lot of picks to play with. So once they find their guys and they can hone in on where to go get them, I easily see this team moving around. We're staying put. We're just taking the picks and we're going. I think edge rusher feels like a position to go look at right now because there's some guys here. I'm going to give you the list a little bit here so you can see that there's quite a few names that have some tools and traits that are definitely NFL draft worthy, guys that I could see taking on teams all the way down through, even Dasan McCullough. I really liked him. I don't know that he's, in the top 300. I think he could be a guy that's drafted as well. But we're in the sixth round, and we've got guys like Anthony Lucas, Patrick Payton, and Marvin Jones Jr. on the board. I think those are all guys that could be in play for a team like the Jets. I'm going Anthony Lucas just because he's got those intangibles. He just, when you look at the tape, when you watch him, he's got the length, he's got the flexibility, he's got the size, he can bring it off the edge. You can see the motor just doesn't quit. So I'm going to take a stab here at him. And add him into my defensive line rotation because you've got some nice edge rushers there already. They didn't trade them. So you've got McDonald, you've got some Jermaine Johnson. There's some young guys. McGregor could be an interesting in play as you get into the next season or two. So throw Lucas in there and let's go. Back on the clock with our other sixth round pick. We still have one more to go after this. I'm going to go running back at this point. Obviously we have our one in Breece Hall. We've got Braylon Allen, who's going to be coming back from injury. I think after that, you've got some guys. I don't necessarily know that I'm in love with the depth on the team. So I want to add another running back into the mix because we already know that Breece Hall's pretty frustrated, so he could very well be gone in free agency, looking for a contract elsewhere. So you could use, even if Braylon Allen's your one, you're then going to need a number two, obviously, because Allen's coming back from injury. You still need somebody who can be a plus pass protector, who does have some ability in the passing game, but can get you short yardage, right? He can get you the tough yards when you need them. Allen's a really good running back, and if you told me he was a 3-down back in that offense for the long term, I wouldn't argue per se, but I just don't necessarily know that I see it. I think they're going to need to balance that workload. I'm going to go with a kind of a surprise here. So we've got Baxter. There's red flags with the injuries, but he's a really good runner. Wisner is running mate in the backfield, also very good. And so is Moss. He kind of gives me he gives me Atlanta Falcons running back vibes in terms of, kind of a stronger physical, if you're thinking like mid 2000s and 2010s Atlanta Falcons running backs, Moss looks like that type of running back, right? Like name any of those guys in that time frame, and he would not surprise me if he was in that backfield too. But Darius Taylor from Minnesota, I think he's got great balance. I think he's a really good pass protector as a running back. I think he identifies the blitzer and picks it up well. I think he's got the ability out of the backfield as a pass catcher if need be. And I think he gets those short yardage runs well. I think he could fit into what they do on the ground and help be a nice complement if need be. Or maybe they get lucky and they keep Breece Hall and he's a number 3 that can rotate in and cover injury or cover in need in a pinch. I think he's a good running back that I think that they could easily roster a player like that. And quite honestly, any one of those 4 running backs would not surprise me, but give me Darius Taylor here. Back on the clock with our last of the 6th-round picks, and I think I'm going to look at tight end depth here. I know we've got Mason Taylor as the guy that looks like should be the future, and you've got some veterans behind him, but I'm going to go with if we're looking for that type of tight end, Brett Norfleet from Missouri. Obviously we know that their scouts are paying attention to Missouri. They went with Membo last year early in the draft. So we know that they've got their eye on Missouri's players. I think Norfleet's got a little bit of that. He's got that. He may not be he's not more athletic, right? But he's a reliable pass catcher. He's not a bad blocker. I think there's room for improvement there. But I think he could be, in that type of role if you're going to have multiple tight ends on the field, which I think they're going to continue to want to do. They're going to want to get more tight ends involved in this conversation. I think Norfleet makes sense. When I was looking at the tight ends that are available at this point, I don't really care for what else we've got on the board, at least at this point. If we're looking for that style of tight end, I like Stoll from Illinois, I think is interesting. And then Haas from Mississippi, I thought was another interesting player as well. But I just don't know that I love the position, or I don't necessarily love the player for what I presume is the type of tight ends they're looking for. I think Norfleet kind of fits that mold better, bigger, better pass catchers, probably a little bit better athletic ability as well. But, time will tell. From what I've seen so far, I will continue to dig in and watch more tape on these guys. But go Norfleet here in the late 6th round. We got 3 more picks left in the 7th round here. I know we took a tackle already who we could wind up seeing somebody play inside, right? We got 3 tackles now at this point on the team that I think are going to be starters to some degree along the offensive line. But I'm going to go with Logan Parr from SMU. I was kind of surprised that when I was looking through the list who was here. I think he can be a bit of an anchor for you. He's a guy who is very smart as an offensive lineman. He's got a lot of high-end football IQ, but he's strong, got strong hands. I think this could be a player that you could have as a depth piece that you develop down the road as an interior guy. He's totally on the interior. I don't see him. And it's probably just a guard, right? Like he's probably not a center guard combo. I think he's probably purely a guard. But here in the 7th round, take him, stash him, develop him, and hopefully you can turn him into a starter down the road. With our last couple picks here, we're winding it down. I want to make sure I get a receiver, although I do feel like this team, we got Garrett Wilson. Obviously, we added A.D. Mitchell, Arian Smith, John Mechie. We've probably got 4 of the guys that'll be on the roster next season already here on the team. So I don't necessarily anticipate unless one of their guys falls to them early. I think they're probably going to wait to the late round, and they might grab one, maybe a second one. I don't necessarily right now see them doubling up on a position that isn't either offensive line or corner. or DB, depending on how you look at it. So I looked at the wide receivers that are here in the 7th round. Brandon Inniss from Ohio State is an interesting one. If they're looking for a guy who's got that big playability, can take the top off the defense. He's got the speed, he's got the size. He can play. I think he's probably a better in zone type receiver. He can be physical, which I think could help lead to some blocking, because we know that they're going to want their receivers to be able to block and get on the edge there and block. I just don't know. For me, it's which style of receiver they're going to be looking for this late, because they've got, dynamic players in Wilson and AD, and then some speed there, Arian Smith and John Mechie is kind of a Swiss Army knife. You can play him inside or outside, and allow him to make some things happen. He started to show some things before he started getting traded around this year. So I'm going with Inniss, but when I look at the other receivers that are available here, there's quite a few. I mean, Dane Key would be a guy I'd be interested in. Even Evan Stewart, Sturdifan, I think has some intrigue, but I went with Inniss just because of the big playability, and I think he's probably the better of the blockers of these guys. But I could be wrong there. So let me know in the comments which receiver you think the Jets would draft. All right, with our last pick here, I'm going with a guy that I've really liked throughout his collegiate career, in Dasan McCullough from Nebraska. I think it'll be interesting to see what they would do with him in this defense. I know we've already grabbed an edge rusher, at his size, 6'5", probably less than 250 pounds by the time he gets to the NFL. Do they have him stand up as an edge rusher? Is his hand in the dirt? What do they do with him? I think he's got the speed and the football IQ to really step in and be one of those situational pass rushers that you could use as kind of a mismatch on the outside. But the thing here is, I think there's a ceiling that we haven't seen with McCullough yet, which is what would make me look at him in the 6th, 7th round if I'm a team. But you guys tell me. This is still early on in the process. There's still plenty of grading left that there needs to be done, plenty of film to be watched. NFL trade deadline's in the book, so I wanted to make sure that we started talking through these things and having these conversations. You let me guys know in the comments. Am I crazy? Am I all the way off the rocker? Who would you be taking if you're Jets fans? You got a lot of players here. You've got a lot of options. I went Mendoza, Dunker, Hill, Banks, Jackson, Rodmore, grabbed Lucas, Taylor, Norfleet, Parr, Inniss, and McCullough. Obviously, as you can see here, I got some good grades, got some bad grades. NFL mock draft database is where I go to do these things. So as they continue to update and as we get closer to the draft, we're going to do more of these. I'll see you guys later.